Also, there will be lights along there, but the city will be paying for them, because that's part of the cost of property improvements. Crosswalks we talked about. Utility relocation, we will be moving fewer of the utility poles because we won't need to extend that sidewalk on the western side of the street all the way down to Eastern Point Road. Trees and plantings I talked about, that was reduced drastically. We are talking about having a few trees down in the area near where the street meets up with Bridge Street, but there's very little in there. Most of this landscaping is just the landscaping that needs to be done when you do construction next to property. And then we have, so the actual construction budget comes in at, and here I am not looking at the page I told you to look at, so here I'm just looking over there, $5,325,504. The rest are what we call the soft costs, the permitting, the legal fees, inspection, the final design. All of these numbers are based, by the way, or have built into them the cost of inflation and also a 10% contingency. I did want to point out that another thing that the committee discussed early on was phasing. We looked at two different kinds of phasing. We looked at phasing in different design elements, and we discovered that that was not going to be practical because most of the design elements are under the surface of the road. So if you did only conduit and then you did only drainage, and then you'd be constantly tearing up the road, which would be both costly and really problematic for people using the road. We also looked at phasing in terms of areas of the road. For instance, going from Bridge Street to that area 300 feet north of School Street. And we discovered that that was not going to be, not only was that not going to be practical, but ultimately would be far more costly, because there are certain costs that remain static. Every time you did that, you would have to get the permitting fees. Every time you would do that, you would have to do the legal fees. So those costs would have to be repeated 3 times if we did this in phases. Not only that, but the longer you put off the program or the project, the more inflation you're going to have to incur every single time you undergo this project, so that it's much more economical to do the project all at once. But we did look at that both at the beginning of the committee's work and again at the end of the committee's work when we discovered the conditions of the underlying road. Our recommendation then is to move forward with this, and we ask you to please bring this forward in a referendum. We thought of the May date to coincide with the city election so that we could again save a little bit of money by doing it when there's also an election when there's already an election underway in part of the area. We also have some other recommendations that you'll see in the committee report. Some of them have to do with how we educate people. One of the things we learned from our survey was that there are misconceptions, as I said earlier, about the role of the town in a project like this. We want to make sure that we educate people properly, not only on what the project entails, but on why it's